Hey everybody, welcome to day 42, Exodus chapters 32 and 34. A few things to go over today. Just to point out, I have my list here of things that I'm writing on. Hopefully you do too. Hopefully you've added to it. If you've read through it and you had your 3x5 cards there, you can kind of get through that part of it. So, and add the things to it, because there's gonna be a lot of things there, and it's kind of cool to look at when we're all done in December. It's gonna be a great thing to do to look at when we're all done. So here we go. Moses intervenes. So the people at the bottom of the mountain they made the calf, and God tells Moses what's going on because God knows everything. Moses comes down and he destroys the tablets, and this is the craziest thing. God is going to destroy them. And that's important to point out, that yes, God will destroy his own people. I hear quite a few people that really don't read their Bible and act all high and mighty, and they say, well, God would never do anything to good people. Okay, read the book of Job. Right there, number one. Now, he had Satan do it, but it was for a purpose, and we went over that already. And the thing is, yes, God would do this. Who knows how many good people are actually in on it. But here's what happens in the next few chapters. You're going to see God starting to manipulate who's who and does what. And that is a big deal. So Moses commands the Levites to kill. So Moses comes down, throws the tablets down. He's mad. Chapter 32, verses 27 to 28. I'm going to reiterate this, because it's so very important. Moses told them, this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Each of you take your swords and go back and forth from one end of the camp to the other. Kill everyone, even your brothers, friends, and neighbors. The Levites obeyed Moses' command, and about 3,000 people died that day. Let that be an example of what's to come, because God goes through the Israelites and keeps separating the good and the bad. That sounds familiar. He's going to do that in the end, in the book of Revelation. So watch out for that. Those are key points, and very important to understand that, yeah, they were God's people. They came out of Egypt, but they just decided they didn't want to follow him, and they're upset about this and upset about that. He knows everybody's heart. And that's why Paul goes on and says, it doesn't matter if you are Jew by blood, you are God's children by the blood of the Lamb. Okay, and here is a big part about separating people. Chapter 32, verse 33. But the Lord replied to Moses, no, I will erase the name of everyone who has sinned against me. He will erase their names. That means their names must be on something that can be erased with not ink or whatever it is that God has. He erases or blots out their names. So I want to talk about that just real quickly. Let's do Revelation first. Revelation 3:5. So the church to the seven churches, the letter to the seven churches, and in chapter 3, verse 5, it says, all who are victorious will be clothed in white. That's nice. We'll wear white clothing. I will never erase their names from the book of life. So when we get to Revelation, I'll add that to the books. You can add it to your list of books if you want. The book of life. There's a book of life, and your name is in it. What an awesome thing. All right? But I will announce before my Father and his angels that they are mine. So Jesus is saying that. He will never erase your names. But God back here is saying, oh, I am going to erase these people's names. You don't want to be in that position. So thank the Lord that we live in this time where we know Jesus Christ. Now, another part of that, Deuteronomy 29. And these were in the study notes here. And sometimes I'll add some things for you. Deuteronomy 29, 19 through 21. Those who hear the warnings of this curse should not congratulate themselves, thinking, I'm safe, even though I am following the desires of my own stubborn heart. This would lead to utter ruin. The Lord will never pardon such people. Instead, his anger and jealousy will burn against them. All curses written in this book will come down on them and the Lord will erase their names from under heaven. The Lord will separate them from all the tribes of Israel to pour out on them all the curses of the covenant recorded in this book of instruction. Add that to your list, book of instruction. Obviously, we haven't read Deuteronomy yet, and you can add it later if you want. But I was just adding it just to make sure I remembered it was there. Key points here. What's going on here? This is Moses speaking, and he's talking about Egypt. He's talking about the people in the land that they're going to kill, the people in the Israelite nation that turns their back on God. That's who he's talking about. If you read the whole thing, that's really what he's talking about. He's not talking about people who know Jesus Christ. He's not talking about people who actually follow the covenant. He's not talking about them. So be careful when people pick and choose certain things. You got to read the whole thing. All right, so that's about the erasing of the names. Book of instruction I mentioned. All right, here's another thing. God's description and attributes. I have a list labeled God description and attributes. On it, it's his descriptions that we're reading, and also on another side of it, I have his names. So his name so far, Yahweh, we've seen that once before, but it's also in our reading today, 33:5. For the Lord, this is not right. I think it's 34:5. Is that right? Yeah, 34:5. Then the Lord came down in a cloud and stood there with him, and he called out his own name, Yahweh. The Lord passes in front of Moses, so I'll get to that in a second. And jealous is another name for God. God says his name is jealous. 34:14. I hope you picked up on that. The Lord replied, I will personally go with you, Moses, and I will give you rest. Everything will be fine for you. That 34:14. That was 33:14. I apologize. Here it is. You must worship no other gods, for the Lord, whose very name is jealous, is a God who is jealous about his relationship with you. Think about jealousy. It's a horrible, horrible thing as far as what it can manipulate your life into being. It's a very strong name, and he's jealous for us, and he does not want to share us with anything else. Okay, descriptions and names. Then he makes a covenant with Moses, which is pretty awesome. Moses intercedes, he makes a covenant with Moses. Let's see here. Then the Lord, 34:1. Then the Lord told Moses, chisel out 2 stone tablets, take like the first ones. I will write on them the same words that were on the tablets you smashed. Okay, so he makes a new covenant with Moses. Verse 10, the Lord replied, listen, I am making a covenant with you in the presence of all your people. All right, so 34:11, it keeps going. He makes this covenant. It's the same covenant he's made with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And all the people around you will see the power of the Lord, the awesome power I will display for you. I will perform miracles that have never been performed anywhere in the earth. I changed the order of that on accident, sorry. But the point is he's performing miracles that people have never seen before. They've already seen some amazing miracles. Verse 11, but listen carefully to everything I command you today. This is so key. Then I will go ahead of you and drive out who? Again, who? How many times are we going to read this? The Amorites, Canaanites, Hittites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. If you listen carefully to the command I'm giving you, he is warning the people because he already knows that they're not going to obey him fully. And what's going to happen? Be very careful never to make a treaty with the people who live in the land where you're going. Maybe they do. If you do, you will follow their evil ways and be trapped. Instead, you must break down their pagan altars. They do this. They break down the altars. They go through the land and they kill a whole lot of people, but they do make treaties. They do worship other idols. You must worship no other gods, for the Lord whose very name is jealous. Okay? Verse 15, you must not make a treaty of any kind with the people living in the land. They lust after their gods, offering sacrifices to them. They will invite you to join them in their sacrificial meals, and you will go with them. Yes, he's telling them, you're going to go with them. You're going to do these things, and they do. He's warning them what they're going to do, and they do it. Marriage. Then you will accept their daughters who sacrifice to other gods as wives for your sons. They will seduce your sons to commit adultery against me by worshiping other gods. And that's what happens. And this is part of what it means by you should marry your own kind. That's where this is coming from. he was warning them, don't go and marry people that don't know who I am and have learned to turn their backs on me. That's the important part. Don't let your sons and daughters marry someone who's not a Christian, who doesn't go to church. Don't let them do that. It's a very, very tough thing to do. I got lucky. And there's another 7 in there, but it's a repetition of what we've been talking about. And then it goes on and says, you must appear before God 3 times. And I was about to tell you I didn't know what that was. And then I read in here, it was the festivals, 34:23. 3 times each year, every man in Israel must appear before the sovereign Lord, the God of Israel. It's talking about the 3 festivals. Festivals of unleavened bread, festival of the harvest, at the beginning and at the end. Tithing. Here's another example of tithing, 34:26. We're almost done. As you harvest your crops, bring the very best of the first harvest to the house of the Lord your God. Bring the very best. The first. It doesn't say at the end of the harvest, bring a tenth. That's not what it says. And it's so very important that we get this over and over again. I've seen heard it in too many churches and heard it from too many people that say, I don't have anything left to tithe. Well, it's because you didn't tithe at the beginning. Now, there was other reasons. We're all smart enough to understand you may be in a pickle and you're in a downward spiral. You got to get out of that somehow. Go get some help. But then immediately, your first fruits. If you teach your children to do that at the beginning, they should never get into that position, all right? Or at least realize they screwed up. And then the last thing, the 40 days of Moses, 40 nights. I talked about this already. Moses remained there on the mountain with the Lord 40 days and 40 nights. And here's the key why I'm bringing it up again. In all that time, he ate no bread and drank no water, and the Lord wrote the terms of the covenant, the 10 commandments, on the stone tablets. Okay, they're written on both sides. That was another thing I want to show you. But the other thing is, he didn't eat or drink 40 days that he was on the mountain. With God, anything is possible, and those 40 days are important. 40 years in the wilderness. We talked about that. That is day 42. I'll see you tomorrow.